Okay, in this meeting, I want to really quickly go over a couple different types of salt that you can consume and why it is that one type of salt is much more prone to potentially causing some high blood pressure issues in some people compared to other types of salt. And you probably have picked up on it a little bit in the article that you should have just read. The difference between sea salt versus regular salt. There is a natural form of salt out there, and then there's a refined form of salt. So taking a look at the slide here, your typical table salt that you would buy at the store is a very refined salt. As you can see, not only is it refined, meaning it is taken from salt beds, but then it is put through a major process to change the chemical composition of it. It is bleached. So there is a bleaching agent that's added to make it white. Natural salt is not typically white. It's either a gray or a pink, depending on where it comes from. It is treated with sulfuric acid. It's treated with chlorine. The chlorine not only bleaches, but both of these products together help to remove certain minerals. So by the time you are done with the refining of salt that becomes table salt or the typical salt that you would buy from the store, it is about 98% sodium chloride. So it's the sodium and the chloride. Now, if you remember in the electrolytes, sodium and chloride are two electrolytes that are found on the outside of your cells, typically not on the inside. They will exchange and they will go inside and sometimes switch out with potassium and phosphorus, but in a stable state, the sodium and the chloride remain on the outside of the cell. So it's interesting to note that most all of the other minerals that are usually found in natural salt or is naturally bound with the sodium and chloride are pretty much removed. And so you have pure sodium chloride. This is also the type of sodium that is used in processed foods. They do iodinize it a little bit. In other words, they add iodine because in our country we tend to have a lot of thyroid issues because of a lack of iodine. As we will learn later on, though, in some later chapters, they don't add nearly enough iodine, and we still deal with iodine deficiency. So even if you did not consume salt or table salt with iodine in it, you still would have to get it somewhere else. They have some anti-caking agents in them, things that make it flow real nicely. Regular natural salt is really quite wet. And what I mean by that is it sticks together very easily because some of the other minerals have some liquid properties to them. So when it's real dry and free flowing, you know there's agents in there that are making it that way. There's also some conditioning agents in there, and some of these are a little bit concerning. Ammonium citrate, aluminum silicate. I mean, we know that aluminum is something toxic for the body. Already, several research studies have proven that aluminum is sometimes implicated in Parkinson's and dementia. That's one of the reasons why we got rid of aluminum pots and pans. And yet, every time you use table salt or consume a processed food with this type of salt in it, you are getting small amounts of aluminum as well. So, how this relates to high blood pressure is that when you take and you consume a lot of pure sodium chloride, mostly in the form of processed foods and fast foods, that sodium chloride can build up in your blood vessels. And remember, where sodium goes, water flows. So, if you have naturally a lot of sodium and chloride in your blood vessels, water is going to pool into your blood vessels. And as a result, you end up with high blood pressure. Now, again, I want to emphasize this really only takes place in about 50% of Americans. We say that some people with high blood pressure are salt sensitive and others are not, and usually it is 50-50. So not everybody with high blood pressure has to reduce their salt intake. And really, everybody with high blood pressure or without high blood pressure should be excluding or eliminating the highly salted processed foods anyways. It would benefit anybody. But one of the reasons why you might see high blood pressure associated with a high salt intake is because of somebody who might consume a lot of fast food, which is very high in sodium chloride, and a lot of processed foods, which are very high in just pure sodium chloride. So you are literally dumping sodium chloride in your body. Now, let's see how this differs from natural salt. There's two different forms. You have real salt, which is also just known as typical sea salt. It is unrefined. It does not have additives, chemicals. It hasn't been processed the way other salts, like table salt, has been processed. It has about over 60 of the different minerals that are found. Now, purely natural salt, that we'll talk about next has all the way up to 80 minerals. Pretty much all the minerals are available. In real salt, which is a different type of salt, I kind of consider it the better. It's not the worst, it's not the best, but it's that good better. Real salt is what I use for my everyday cooking if I can't use the Celtic sea salt, which we'll talk about in a minute. It's a very good salt in that you have all those extra minerals. Now, with this type of salt and the Celtic sea salt right below, the Celtic sea salt is also unrefined, no additives, no chemicals, no heat processing, none of that extra stuff that happens with your table salt. It's just that the Celtic sea salt is even more beneficial to you because of the added minerals. Now, what I want to emphasize to you guys is Celtic sea salt particularly is actually known as being very therapeutic by many doctors. It does not matter if somebody has high blood pressure or if they don't, or if they have congestive heart failure, or if they don't. All around the band, Celtic sea salt is a very healthy, nutritious additive to have in your diet on a daily basis because of all the other minerals that are added to it, not just the sodium chloride. Sodium chloride is there, but so is phosphorus, so is calcium, so is magnesium, so is iodine. So it's just a whole bunch of different minerals are there. Manganese, silica, things that should be in our diet. Interestingly, all those extra added minerals are the minerals that keep you from getting high blood pressure. And that's why this type of salt does not cause high blood pressure. The only type of salt that might cause high blood pressure is your highly refined processed white table salt that you can buy in the store. I want to show you guys a minute here what some of these looks like, and I'm going to do that by increasing the screen. Oh, give me just a minute here. Okay, see if I can get you guys to see this. What I'm going to show you first is what real salt looks like. Real salt is kind of a pink color. See if I can, there we go. Okay, so you guys should be able to see that. See, it's kind of grainy. You can see all the other minerals that are in there, but it is a light pink color. You can buy this at Walmart or Meijer very easily in the same section that you would buy your typical salt. Looks a little bit like peppery salt, but that's what I would use for just your everyday table salt. The Celtic sea salt is very grainy. This is what Celtic sea salt would look like. Now, this is not a fine version, as you can tell. There's lots of big crystals. It's quite gray. It's also very moist. I use this in soups or anything that would require me to or allow it to dissolve, but this is by far the healthiest salt. You can buy it in a fine version. This is what the fine version looks like. That is also Celtic sea salt, but as you know, it's broken down. The only reason why I sometimes do not buy that particular type all the time is because it's very expensive, and Celtic sea salt in general is more expensive. You will find that. However, you only need a very little amount to do the job, whereas table salt, you're probably going to need at least twice that amount. So I encourage you guys to look for real salt in the store. Don't be afraid to use it. I salt everything that I cook. And Celtic sea salt, if you can have a little bit of that around in your house too, and use it occasionally for soups or whatnot. If you can use it daily, that's even better. Use it daily. But do not be afraid to use these types of salt. What you want to stay away from is processed salt, by all means.